What happens to a place when everyone leaves? When the doors slam shut, the laughter fades, and nature slowly takes back what was once hers. Ghost towns aren't just ruins, they're time machines. Frozen moments where history stalled and never hit play again. Some were abandoned overnight, others bled out slowly. War, disaster, economic collapse, each has its own ghost story to tell. In this video, we're taking you on a world tour of the forgotten, the crumbling, and the downright haunting. From sun-scorched deserts to frozen Soviet outposts, these are places that once thrived, but now just decay. So hit subscribe, maybe turn on a light, and join us for 10 ghost towns forgotten by time, where the people are long gone, but the past still lingers. Our first stop is Kayakoy, Turkey. Nestled in the hills above the turquoise coast of southwestern Turkey, Kayakoy looks like something from a dream or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Hundreds of stone houses climb the slopes in silent rows, their windows empty, their roofs long since caved in. Once a thriving Greek village known as Levisi, it was abandoned almost overnight in the 1920s during a brutal population exchange between Greece and Turkey. This wasn't a slow economic decline or a natural disaster. It was geopolitics. More than 1 million Greeks and Turks were forcibly uprooted from their homes as part of a nation-building exercise, and the Greek Orthodox Christians of Kayakoy were marched out, never to return. Turkish Muslims from Greece were meant to resettle here, but most refused, put off by the ghostly atmosphere and remote setting. Today, the shells of churches, schools, and homes still stand, bleached by the sun and slowly overtaken by vegetation. The town's been preserved as a historical monument, but walking through it, you get the feeling it doesn't need any plaques or guides. The silence does all the storytelling. It's a ghost town born of politics, not plague or poverty, and that makes its ruins feel all the more tragic. Next up, we have Hashima Island, Japan. Nicknamed Gunkanjima, Battleship Island, this concrete fortress off the coast of Nagasaki once housed over 5,000 people, crammed into one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Built around a thriving undersea coal mine, Hashima rose like a dystopian city from the sea, with towering apartment blocks, rooftop playgrounds, and barely a scrap of green space. It was a symbol of Japan's rapid industrial rise in the 20th century. But when petroleum replaced coal in the 1970s, the mine shut down overnight. Within weeks, everyone left. Furniture, toys, even half-finished meals were abandoned in place. Today, the island is eerily silent, a brutalist husk slowly crumbling under salty winds and typhoons. It's been used in films like Skyfall for its eerie, post-apocalyptic look, and although parts of it are now open to tourists, most of the island remains off-limits, too unstable, too haunted by its own history. The ghosts here aren't just metaphorical either. During the Second World War, Korean and Chinese forced laborers were held in brutal conditions on the island. So for all its cinematic charm, Hashima is a reminder that ghost towns can carry dark secrets behind the silence. Our third location is Katowice, Russia. Katowice is the kind of place that looks like it was abandoned mid-sentence. Half-eaten meals still sit on tables, toys lie scattered in school corridors, Soviet propaganda peels from crumbling walls. This was once a bustling mining town in Russia's Far East, built during Stalin's reign as part of the post-war industrial boom. It was bleak, remote, and cold enough to freeze your breath in seconds. But it had jobs, flats, schools, and purpose. Then came the collapse. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the state subsidies that kept places like Katowice alive vanished. A fatal mine explosion in the mid-90s sealed its fate, and the government ordered a full evacuation. Residents were relocated, and buildings were literally blown up to stop people coming back. What's left is an eerie snapshot of a life mid-sentence, cut off mid-word, mid-breath. Concrete tower blocks stand silent against a frozen horizon. Nature is reclaiming everything. The playgrounds are rusting, the power's long gone, and the silence is only broken by the occasional creak of wind through broken glass. Katowice isn't just a ghost town, it's a monument to a vanished system. Built by Soviet ambition, emptied by post-Soviet neglect. It's what happens when a country changes direction and forgets to tell the towns it leaves behind. Our next stop is Kmanskop, Namibia. If you ever wanted to see what it looks like when a town gets swallowed by the desert, Kmanskop's your place. Once a glittering outpost of German colonial ambition, This Namibian ghost town rose out of the sand in the early 1900s thanks to one thing: diamonds. A railway worker found some lying in the dirt, and within weeks, the area was swarming with prospectors. Kmanskop exploded into life with lavish villas, a hospital, a casino, a school, even an ice factory. All of it, built in the middle of nowhere. At its height, this town was dripping in wealth and eccentricity. Residents imported champagne from Europe and held masked balls in the desert. Trains delivered ice daily to keep food cold. For a brief, glittering moment, it was absurdly grand. But diamond supplies dwindled, and bigger deposits were discovered further south. By the 1950s, the town was abandoned to the dunes. Today, sand dunes pour through the doorways and fill up bedrooms like some surreal dreamscape. Whole houses are buried waist-deep in dust. It's a haunting blend of opulence and decay, where the desert has crept in and calmly taken back control. Still with us? Good. Now we're off to Oradour-sur-Glane, France. There are ghost towns, and then there's Oradour-sur-Glane, a place left in ruins, not by time, but by horror. In June 1944, just days after D-Day, a Waffen-SS division rolled into this quiet French village and wiped it from the map. Without warning, they rounded up the residents, separated the men from the women and children, then murdered them all. Over 640 people were killed in a single day. Homes were burned, bodies dumped in barns, and the town left in ashes. After the war, Charles de Gaulle made a decision. The village would never be rebuilt. Instead, it would stand exactly as the Nazis left it, as a memorial to the massacre. And so it has. Rusting bicycles remain propped against walls. Burned-out cars still sit in the streets. The church, where dozens of women and children were killed, is eerily untouched. It's a village frozen in trauma. Walking through Oradour feels less like visiting ruins and more like trespassing on grief. It's one of the few places in the world deliberately kept dead. Not forgotten, not rebuilt, just left. Because sometimes the past should be allowed to haunt us. Let's go stateside to Bodie in California, USA. Once a rip-roaring gold rush town, Bodie was the kind of place where fortunes rose fast and morals dropped faster. In the late 1800s, it had all the hallmarks of Wild West excess: saloons, shootouts, opium dens, and the occasional mysterious fire. At its peak, Bodie hosted over 10,000 residents, dozens of brothels, and a murder rate that would make even the most hardened frontier sheriff blush. But gold veins dry up, and so did Bodie. By the early 20th century, the town had slipped into decline, losing residents to more promising strikes elsewhere. A couple of suspicious blazes finished off what greed hadn't already hollowed out. By the 1940s, the last few stubborn locals packed up and left. But unlike many ghost towns, Bodie was preserved in a state of arrested decay. That means it's been left exactly as it was found, rotting timbers and all, just with a little structural TLC to stop it falling apart entirely. Today, you can stroll down its dusty streets, peer into homes still full of furniture, and gaze at classrooms frozen mid-lesson. It's a time capsule of the American frontier, right down to the whiskey bottles. And if you're thinking of pocketing a souvenir, don't. They say Bodie is cursed, and visitors who've tried to take pieces home often end up posting them back, with apologies and a plea for forgiveness. This seems like a good time to visit Krakco in Italy. If you've ever watched a historical epic and wondered where they find those perfectly eerie, ancient ruins clinging to a cliffside, chances are you've seen Krakco. Perched dramatically atop a hill in southern Italy, this medieval town looks like it was dreamt up by a Gothic novelist with a flair for tragedy, and in some ways, it was. Krakco thrived for centuries thanks to its defensible position and fertile lands. It was home to nobles, peasants, and priests, all crammed into narrow stone streets beneath the looming shadow of its watchtower. But by the 20th century, the land beneath Krakco had other ideas. Poor planning, shoddy infrastructure, and overgrazing all contributed to catastrophic landslides. Entire buildings started to slide down the hillside like misbehaving cake slices, and by the 1960s, it was clear the town wasn't safe. After an earthquake and a devastating flood added insult to injury, the last residents were evacuated in the early 1980s. Now, Krakco stands abandoned, a skeletal maze of crumbling homes and collapsed staircases. No cars, no people, just silence, save for the occasional tourist or film crew. It's been used as a backdrop in films like The Passion of the Christ and Quantum of Solace, But don't let the Hollywood gloss fool you. Krakco isn't a set, it's a ghost of the past. We're moving on again now to Agdam in Azerbaijan. Once a bustling city of over 150,000 people, Agdam now looks like the aftermath of a particularly apocalyptic video game. Located near the border with Nagorno-Karabakh, it became an unfortunate casualty of the brutal conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan in the early 1990s. When the Armenian forces seized control of the region in 1993, Agdam's residents were forced to flee, and what followed wasn't just occupation, it was erasure. The city was systematically looted, burned, and left to rot. Homes were stripped bare. Schools, shops, and mosques were reduced to shells. Trees punched through cracked floorboards and grew through living rooms as roofs collapsed. For years, Agdam was dubbed the Hiroshima of the Caucasus, not because of nuclear destruction, but because of its utter desolation. Except instead of radioactive fallout, it was war and abandonment that did the damage. Following a ceasefire deal in 2020, Azerbaijan regained control of Agdam. The government has made noises about rebuilding, but for now, the ruins remain, a cautionary tale written in shattered concrete and overgrown streets. Walking through Agdam today is like stepping into a world frozen at the moment it broke. A city-sized ghost haunted not by myth, but by memory. Next on our list is Varosha in Cyprus. In the early 1970s, Varosha was the jewel of Cypriot tourism. This seaside district in the city of Famagusta was all sun-drenched beaches, modern hotels, and glamorous visitors. Think Brigitte Bardot and Elizabeth Taylor sipping cocktails by the pool. It was booming, buzzing, and building skyward. Then came 1974. When Turkey invaded Cyprus following a Greek-backed coup, the residents of Varosha fled practically overnight. They locked their doors, left meals half-eaten on tables, and expected to return in a few days. They never did. The Turkish military fenced off the entire area, and for nearly 50 years, it remained a no-go zone, abandoned, frozen, and slowly decaying behind barbed wire. Nature took over. Streets cracked, trees grew through hotel lobbies, and luxury cars rusted in garages. Peacocks, bizarrely, made it their home. For decades, it became the ultimate forbidden postcard, a tropical paradise held in suspended ruin. In recent years, parts of Varosha have been reopened by Turkish authorities, stirring international controversy and reigniting old tensions. But the atmosphere remains eerie, like a glamorous party that ended mid-dance. The buildings are still standing, just barely, and it's not every ghost town where peacocks have taken over the penthouse suites. But the soul of the place? That checked out in '74 and never came back. Now we're in Plymouth. No, not in England, but in Montserrat. When people talk about modern-day Pompeii, they usually mean this place. Plymouth was once the bustling capital of Montserrat, a lush Caribbean island known for its music scene and volcanic peaks. In the early 90s, it was home to around 4,000 people, and despite being perched near the Soufriere Hills volcano, life carried on peacefully. That is, until the mountain decided it had other plans. In 1995, the volcano woke up. What started as a grumble turned into a full-blown disaster. Ash rained down like snowfall, buildings collapsed under the weight, and pyroclastic flows, a fancy term for fast-moving death clouds, swept through the town. But by 1997, Plymouth was gone, not slowly abandoned, but buried, half-destroyed and permanently uninhabitable. The government had no choice but to declare it a danger zone and relocate the capital. Today, what remains of Plymouth looks like a city smothered in gray flour. Rooftops poke through hardened ash. A church steeple juts out like a tombstone. It's haunting, surreal, and utterly silent. Time didn't forget this place. It just got incinerated. And yet, some Montserratians still live nearby, stubbornly rebuilding on the edges of a volcano that's still considered active. You'd think after all that, humanity might get the hint. If the ground's on fire, the air's poison, or wars park tanks on your doorstep, maybe don't stick around. But that's not how we work. Whether it's for money, memories, or sheer bloody-mindedness, people find ways to cling on, even when nature, history, or bad decisions scream otherwise. These ghost towns aren't just eerie postcard fodder. They're reminders of our resilience, yes, but also our hubris. They show how quickly civilization can pack up and vanish, leaving only ruins, silence, and the occasional tourist with a selfie stick. So if this video made you raise an eyebrow, Drop a comment, share it with a fellow history nerd, and hit subscribe for more curious corners of the human story. Because let's face it, we may not be good at picking where to live, but we've got some great tales about how we stayed anyway.